gas training, boiler service tips. My name's Alan Hart, and in today's video I did a post. I put it onto our training group, and I put it onto Twitter as well, just asking for tips for new trainees or new gas engineers or new plumbers that are going to be doing boiler servicing. And I got a real big response, and we've got lots of questions, lots of tips, should I say, and I'm going to go through them with you shortly. First of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over to Viva Training Academy with Roy, and Roy's put a video together, and that's just to go through some of the tips that might help you as a new gas engineer or a new plumber. And then also after that, what I'm going to do, we'll come back and I'm going to go through some of these tips that we've got from the groups. So yeah, I hope this video is of some interest to you. And if you do have any comments or any tips or help or advice that you can give new trainees, then please put them in the comments below. And yeah, we'll really appreciate that. So yeah, let's go over to Roy. This video is for gas safe, registered and trainee gas engineers under supervision. Please comply with the current regulations at the time.
Thanks, Al. Hi guys, it's Roy Fugler here at the Viva Training Academy over in Halifax, and today what I'm going to go through is a quick video looking at what we need to check when we go out to do a boiler service. The main thing when you're going out to boilers, always have a copy of the manufacturer instructions. The customer should have these. It's a warranty requirement, and if you're doing a service, they'll probably want you to fill the service log in at the back anyway. So when they ring up and book you in for a service, just say to them, make sure you've got your manual there. I may need to refer to it, but the main thing is I need to fill your service log in for your warranty. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So first thing is flues. So have we got the flue there? Does the flue look it's in the correct angle? This one is falling back to the boiler because it's a condensing boiler, so that's what we'd expect. Some manufacturers say now that we should be screwing the flues and the supply screws, so that's where your MIs come in. That's only been in over the last few years, so some of the older boilers won't have flues screwed, some of the newer boilers will. Supports, if we've got flues up in lofts and things like that, we should have purpose-made brackets like the ones up there. We can't use galvanised band anymore, but a few years ago, that's what we were doing. So we've got to make a risk assessment. Is that flue secure with that galvanised band? If that flue's in a void, have we got inspection hatches that we need to inspect that flue? And things like that. Other things we'd be looking at with the flue, the termination, where's it located? I remember a few years ago going to a boiler that had an intermittent fault, and when I went outside and checked it, what had happened was the customer had some ivy growing up the wall, and it had gone into the flue and started blocking it off. That boiler had had 3 visits. The reason the other guys hadn't been outside is the customer had 2 Alsatian dogs, and they were bothered by the dogs. Now the customer was quite happy to keep the dogs out of the way while I went and checked the flue. So again, checking the flue, making sure it's okay. Where's it located outside? If it's below 2 metres in height, it should have a terminal guard. Again, one of these things, we go to older boilers, the customer may have been told several times in the past that it needed a terminal guard, and they've just said, look, I don't want one. I didn't need to have one 10, 20 years ago, so I don't want one now. Again, it's just advising them, making sure that they're safe. An old boiler, the old square flue boilers, the flue temperatures, we were looking at 175 degrees. Modern condensing boilers like this Green Star, we're probably looking at no more than 60 degrees, so we haven't got the same temperature issues. However, a modern boiler should have that terminal guard there for protection. So they're the things that we're looking at on flue. So termination, location, access if it's not totally visible. Obviously if the flue's in a loft, we need to inspect it, so we need to have lights up there, we need to have ladders up there, we need to have it boarded if we're going to enter that loft. That's a requirement, a legal requirement. The customer should have that. I know that some guys have fitted boilers in lofts in the past. I've been guilty of it back in the day, walking on roof trusses and tiptoeing across roofs. I'm not built for that anymore. If I fall through that ceiling, it's going to be a damn big hole, and I don't want to fall through it because that's going to hurt me. So that's a little bit about flues. So the next thing we'll go on to, before you touch the boiler, we need to look at our basic electric safety checks. Now, one thing cropped up a few videos ago, I was talking about using a volt stick. Now, I have 2 volt sticks. You may have seen me use my fluke one in a few videos in the past. Now, that one I purely use for checking 240 volts going to components. The one I use for checking the boiler case is this one. This is a volt stick, and it's an LV50. The reason it's 50, it picks up 50 volts. 60 volts is the lowest voltage which death's been recorded. I don't know where it was. I've always been told that. So this one picks up 50 volts, and this one, it's always turned on. So I just check it, it's glowing red, then I'm proving the case is safe for me to touch. Then I can carry out my basic electric safety checks. TB118, we keep harping on about it, but we still get gas engineers getting electric shocks. So we want to reduce the amount of people doing that. So once we're in there, the other things that we can look at is once we've removed that case, we're going to check the case seals, making sure that the seals are intact. Now obviously, if that case seal isn't correct, it's damaged, that's going to allow air to draw into the boiler on a negative pressure boiler, and it's going to potentially put products back out on a positive pressured boiler. So we need to be checking case seals, making sure they're okay. When it comes to things like burner seals, again, it depends what work you're doing on there. Some manufacturers say that you can demount the burner out the boiler and just visually inspect the seal. That's what Baxy's been doing for a good number of years. Valent, on the other hand, if you break that seal, you've got to replace that seal. So always refer to your manufacturer's instructions. If I'm not breaking the seal, I'm always going to tighten them up. One of the things that I've heard happen is, particularly on some of the Worcesters, those seals, if they're not tight, they can cause damage, they can cause fire. So always check if you're not replacing seals, because some boilers you don't need to strip them down to do a service. It's in the manufacturer's instructions that you don't need to do that. So always check that out, make sure that's okay. So other things that we're going to check, a modern boiler, condensing boiler, is going to have a condensate pipe. So making sure that the trap is clear, making sure that the condensate pipe is running correctly. It's the correct size, it's correctly lagged. That's been one of the big issues we've had over the last few years. Condensate's not being done correctly, not upgraded when they're going outside. And I know lots and lots of engineers that will turn around and have said to me in the past, oh, I've been using 21.5 mil overflow pipe for years, I've never had one freeze up. Happy days. However, if they do freeze up, that can cause all sorts of problems for customers. There's something out on the market now, Condensate Pro. I've seen that in action. It's a real good product. It's something that I've used on boilers, so it's something to look at. Obviously, if it's not causing an issue at the moment, it's just advising customers on things like that. Gas pipe. Have we got the correct size gas pipe? I know it's one of these that we probably overlook. We've got a 22 mil pipe coming off the meter going to the boiler. This is a system boiler, it's only 18 kilowatts. So 22 mil is going to be fine. But we're getting larger and larger combis now. We're talking 35, 40, 42 kilowatt combis. They're pulling a heck of a lot of gas. So they may need to be upgraded to 28 mil. So always doing your safety checks on there. Make sure you've got the correct incoming gas pressures. Make sure you've got the correct gas rates. That's all part of doing your proper safety checks. And then when we're looking at safety checks, making sure the safety devices are operating correctly. Things like turning the gas off underneath and making sure it locks out. Some of these modern boilers can take 3, 4, 5 attempts before they lock out. And you stood in front of a boiler and the customer wonders what you're doing because you've maybe got the tap running to get a demand on it. And you appear to be doing nothing, but you're checking the safety devices. Again, always refer to your manufacturer's instructions. Make sure that they're adhered to. You're doing what it says in the book, because if there's a warranty call and they want to know what's been serviced, you've done it to manufacturer specifications. Don't always leave it to chance. Read what it says in the book. because different manufacturers have different ideas what constitutes a service, and that's up to them. They've made the decision. So one of the things that we now do with modern boilers is flue gas analysis. So before I do any flue gas analysis in the flue, I always do an air integrity test. Obviously this flue here, as you can see, I've got a number of joints in there. I don't have kryptonite for my breakfast, I tend to have Weetabix, so I can't see through the metal air inlet. So what I'm checking is to make sure the flue seals haven't become damaged and not leaking products back into the air inlet. So that's why we do an air integrity test. And I do it every time I go out to a boiler for my own peace of mind, and it literally takes me 2-3 minutes. Then I can do a flue analysis. And the other reason for doing the air integrity test is when I get the results of my flue gas analysis, I know the boiler is breathing nice clean air in. So that's the other reason I do it. The figures that I get are genuine figures, they're not being corrupted by contaminated air. And then I'd check on the manufacturer instructions what I'm looking for to make sure it's within tolerance. If it means I need to fully strip the boiler down and clean it out and then retest it, I'll do that. If it's within the manufacturer's tolerance, that means I don't need to fully strip it down. So they're sort of things I'd check. The other thing I'm going to check, modern boiler, it'll have an expansion vessel in it. Because it's got an expansion vessel in there, I want to check the pressure in that expansion vessel. We have done a previous video about checking expansion vessels. The other thing I'm going to check is the PRV, the pressure release valve. Now, some manufacturers say we should test them. I know there's a thought of don't open it up because when we shut them down, they won't seal properly. Now, that's because there's dirt in the system. Again, if there is a filter on the system, we might want to clean the filter out. But coming back to the PRV, the main thing is where does it terminate? Is it safe and visible? They're the two things that it needs to be, safe and visible, because it's going to be outside, and if it goes off for the reason it's been designed, you're going to get water coming out there in excess of 90 degrees. It's going to be virtually steam coming out of there, so it's going to be really, really dangerous. So we need to make sure that that's terminating safely and visibly, and there's no problems with that. So that's something else to be checking. I know some of you guys fit the little mushroom terminal so that it spreads it across the wall. They're a great little invention. Some people kick it back, some people take it into a drain. Just making sure that it's in the right place so it's not going to cause any damage, any issues. So that's something else to be checking. So that can be done when you're checking the flue outside and you're checking the condensate. Just have a quick look where the PRV pipe comes through and how it terminates. And again, you can instruct the customer if you don't think it's how it should be. Refer to your manufacturer's instructions. Offer to upgrade it if you think it needs upgrading. And that way, you're keeping that customer nice and safe. So one thing to always check before we put the case back on, if we've obviously we'll have done an inlet working pressure or maybe a burner pressure on an older appliance. So the main thing is when we put those test points back in, we're going to test them with LDF. Always make sure you're using LDF. Some boilers, the test points are quite close to electrics, so you might want to use a little gas sniffer. There are various sniffers about. Any joints that you've disturbed, always use your LDF or a gas sniffer to check them, because what we don't want to do is we've come to service a boiler, not leave it in a dangerous state. So it's always worth making sure that you've done all your tasks. It's one of the things that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. Did I put that flue gas test point back in? Did I tighten that test point up? Inevitable I have done, but it's just that little nagging doubt. So always make sure any joints that you disturb, any joints you open, you tighten back up and you use your LDF, or if it's close to electrics, you use a gas sniffer so you're not causing problems by spraying leak detection spray anywhere near the electrics. Right guys, so when we talk about electrics, one of the main things to check is you've got the correct size fuse. So I'm just going to pop the power off. I've done my electrical safety checks, I've done my TB118s on here, but it is one of the things that we find quite a lot now. One of the trainees at Viva, who's doing the MLP course, the managed learning course, is a Sparky. And I asked him, how come every time I look on a new build, or I used to go to new builds, the fuse was a 13 amp fuse. And he said that most fuse spurs are actually specified with a 13 amp fuse in. You can buy fuse spurs with a 3 amp fuse in. The daft thing is they're a little bit dearer. So it's always worth carrying a little pack of 3 amp fuses. The reason for the 3 amp fuse is quite simple. It's to make sure that the boiler, if there is a problem with anything to do with electrics, that fuse goes before we get any chance of any fires. So we'd always make sure that we've got a 3 amp fuse. It's something, always check the fuse rating, make sure it's got the 3 amp fuse. They're normally a ready colour. Your 13 amps are brown, the odd 5 amp which I've found in boilers in the past are usually black. So it's just something to be aware of. Make sure you've got the correct fuse rating in there. And again, it's just swapping things over. It's doing that extra little bit. It's making sure, and you can say to the customer, look, I noticed that you got the wrong size fuse in. I've put the correct fuse in there. And you're giving them a little bit extra. So here, we're in the training academy. So the boiler's on a nice big wall. It's all open. However, what you might find in a customer's house, particularly if the boiler's fitted in a kitchen or a utility room, it's fitted in cupboards. So refer to your manufacturer instructions. A lot of the modern boilers now, they don't need any purpose-built ventilation if they're in a cupboard. But again, always check your instructions. Size-wise, I know for a fact that Bax's always used to be 5mm at either side, 5mm in front if it was on a cupboard. There's a measurement usually of 200mm below the boiler to any work surface. That's more for working on. Obviously, the more gap, more room we've got underneath, the easier it is for us to get under there to the taps. And above it, obviously, we need access to the flue gas analysation points. So when we're doing our flue gas analysation as part of doing a service and our flue integrity checks, we need to be able to get onto those. So make sure that it's in the correct size cupboards. So old cylinder cupboards, I've come across boilers on the top of stairs where the old cylinders come out and the boiler's in there with a vertical flue going up through into the loft. So obviously the flue's fitted correctly and the cupboards of adequate size. So that's something else to look out for. You've got the correct ventilation, if ventilation is required in that cupboard. Other things are your filling loop, making sure that the customer understands. I've had lots of jobs where the boilers have been in a few years, the customer still doesn't understand the filling loop. Offer to show them how to repressurise the boiler. Explain about the controls and things like that, because some customers forget. That might not be the person who's in the house now, might not be the person that had the boiler fitted. They may have inherited it, they've just moved in, so they don't understand the controls. Just ask them, do you understand your controls? If they say yeah, not a problem. If they don't and you've explained it to them, you've given them a bit of an extra thing. And what that does, that gives you that little boost of the customer going, this guy's really good. He's helped me out. He's shown me what to do. I understand that now. I'm going to get him back next year to do my service. And I'm going to tell all my friends what a good guy he was. So that's just a few little tips about what to look for on a service. What sort of things you should be doing. Again, I don't want to teach grandma to suck eggs. This video is purely aimed at the new guys coming into the industry, not you guys that have been doing the job 20, 25 years. Having said that, you can always teach an old dog new tricks. I'm learning all the time. As I say, if you've got any questions, any comments, please put them down there. Ask as many questions as you want. I got a message yesterday. Guy said to me, sorry to ask a stupid question. My first reply to that was, there is absolutely no such thing as a stupid question. Absolutely no way in my book. If somebody's got a question, however stupid they think it might be, it ain't stupid. It's something they want to know. And if me or I'll know the answer, we'll come back to them straight away. If we don't, we'll try find the answer for you. So if you've got any questions at all, any comments, anything you'd like us to do in the future, please let us know. Stick some comments down below. Like I say, it's just been a quick one, this, just to give you a few ideas what to look for. So until next time, it's been Roy Fugler at the Viva Training Academy. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for that, Roy. And once again, thank you to Viva Training Academy for your help and tips and tricks there. One thing I will say, what I would advise you to do is do a list. So when I worked for British Gas, inside my laptop case, I had a list of things that I needed to check, because it's really, really easy to forget something that you might know normally, but it's just a good idea to write a list. That's what I would say to you. But yeah, let's have a look at some of these tips that we've got. Always check the boiler is working properly before you take the cover off, preferably in front of the customer. Servicing, always quote plus parts. If you're going to change a burner seal, you wouldn't want to be doing that at your own profits. Test boiler operation before touching it. Also, go on as many manufacturer training courses as possible. They are brilliant, really. I would advise that myself. Keep an eye on test nipples because they grow legs and walk. Yeah, you don't want to be losing test nipple out of a meter when you're doing a tightness test. Learn how different systems work, old and new. Can save you a lot of time. Last thing I do after every job is check meter nipple, flue test points. Nothing worse than laying in bed and can't remember doing them. So I can only agree with that. Make sure you check everything. You haven't left no test nipples open, spraying with LDF, etc. And I also take a picture as well, just to double check. And this is really interesting. Follow the ignition sequence. Wear knee pads. Knee pads, something that my knees are bad now, I could do with knee pads. Take a picture of the timer on, and then you can remember what it is afterwards. Protect working areas, test controls before taking casing off, etc, etc. I hope this video has helped some of you guys that are new in training. If you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below. And if you've got any advice for new trainees, again, if you can put them in comments below, really appreciate that. And the most important thing of all is make sure you read the manufacturer's instructions for any particular boiler.